Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Project Stargate. Today I have my co hosts, Jake and Greg. What's up, fellas?
Hello.
What's going on, Mark?
All right, man. Doing great. Today we got a special guest, Steve Hudgeons with MUFON. We're going to waste no time. We're going to jump right into this right now. Steve has an extensive history of MUFON. We're going to learn more about that and also the latest buzz in the UFO world. We'll see what's going on with that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Steve, welcome to Project Stargate, and thank you for being with us on the program.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's good to be here.
Better than I deserve, my friend. I'm very glad to have you here.
Well, I don't do very many interviews. I haven't done any for a while, but ask
That's
me
all
anything
right.
you want.
That is all right, man. We're glad to have you. I want to start this off, Steve, and could you just share, if you for our listeners and for us also, can you share a little bit about your background, why you got into these fields of research, the paranormal UFO field, and how you got what you do at MUFON and how you got started with that?
Well, okay. I have always been interested in UFOs as a I don't know, a young teenager or before teenager, and as old as I am, I used to read a newspaper that they issued a long time ago. It's called the Enquirer. My grandmother had I guess an account with them, and she was always getting them. I don't know if she got them in the mail or if she bought them at the store. I don't know. I just know she had a bunch of them laying around, and I was always reading them, and they were full of anything and everything that was paranormal and UFOs and all of that stuff. And it really piqued my interest because what I really, of course, that was a long time ago. It was back in the 50s. I remember vaguely the Bigfoot that would come into the Indian villages and the tents and things and steal the women and take off with the women and of course that was my preteen days. I said, well, why are they taking the women off? I guess they're easier to eat and their bones are not as they don't fight or something. I don't know, but I was always fascinated with that. And then it got into UFOs and I started reading about Dogman. Of course, back then they called it werewolves. And just all of that just piqued my interest, and it made me more alert of my surroundings, for whatever that's worth. And I was always upset because I never saw a UFO, and just oh man, I was aggravated with that. Never, 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 never. I hated it, and I just said, well, I live in Fort Worth. I still live in Fort Worth, and we're surrounded by airports. And matter of fact, there's an airport not 2 miles from me. It's Meacham Field Airport, and then, of course, we got one in Dallas, and there's the SAC command that was over at Carswell Air Force Base in Lake Worth, and so we had aircraft in the air all the time, and I was just constantly looking, never saw anything, and I started getting irritated with it, and that just branched out and went on and on and on, and then one day I was talking to my sister about a UFO that was some report in the newspaper I was reading about. And she said, "You interested in that stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you need to be in MUFON." I said, "MUFON? What's that?" "That's a mutual UFO network." I said, "Oh, okay." This was back in about 1991 or something. And I said, "Well, uh, I want to get into it." And she said, "Well, you have to join." I said, "That's not a problem. I've got a job. I'll pay whatever it is." Back then, it was. She said, "Well," she said, "you have to be." Someone has to let you know. Someone has to look into you and see what. She said, "That's all right. I know the state director in Oklahoma." And I said, "Okay." So I don't know. It took her about a week to get an application. I got the application, filled it out, and I think the fee was $25 back then. I think, but anyway, I paid my money. I got my little card, membership card, and a monthly journal. And it seemed like we rocked on for about a year, and I got the monthly journal every time, and it went on and on and on, and I was expecting to have meetings. Well, we never had any meetings or anything, and I said, well, maybe I need to step this thing up. I noticed that you had to click a special button to be a field investigator. So I clicked that field investigator button when it's time
Oh
for me.
boy.
Yeah, I clicked that button to when I renewed my membership. Well, I got a nice little, fast little letter saying, well, you can't just select to be a field investigator. You have to take the test, and you have to buy the field investigator's manual. I said, okay. I forget how much that was. It was more than $25, maybe $50 total, something of that nature. So I did that and got the field investigator's handbook, and the test was a 100 question test, and it even to this day it's still a open book test, and all of the answers are in the field investigator's manual and a 100 question test. Anyway, I looked them all up and took them and kept on going. About a week later, I passed all that stuff in, and I passed the test. So I said, all right, now I'm a field investigator. I got a little ID card that says I'm a field investigator. I said, all right. I said, I'll be able to see the stuff now. And a month went by, nothing. A month went by, nothing. Another month went by, nothing. I was starting to throw this thing in, take the towel and throw it. And,
I
and all of a
don't
sudden,
blame you, man.
so all of a sudden I got a letter in the mail. It says, we're going to have a MUFON meeting over in Dallas on such date. And since you're a MUFON field investigator, or a MUFON member rather, you're invited to come. So all 5 of us attended. That's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I was the only field investigator. So I said, okay, that explains to me why I wasn't getting any cases, is because there's nobody here. And what happened was that about the time that I joined up, the large group they had in the Dallas-Fort Worth area sort of split into 2 and got mad at each other because they wanted to bring in paranormal with the UFOs. And there was a big fight and everybody quit. So we basically had to start over. And it took about 5 years to build that place back up, and we finally did with the state director that joined in, and well, I started getting cases then, and that's how I got into MUFON, and I've been into MUFON for so long, about 32 years, I think now. I've been just about everything on the list that there is to be, other than the guy in charge, the executive director. I don't want any part of that. No, hell no. But he's too busy. He's got too much stuff on his own. Dave McDonald, he's got too much stuff on his plate. He's constantly busy, and I didn't want any part of that.
Isn't that a volunteer position also, just like everything else in MUFON? It's not it's not like a paid position. It's something that person volunteers their blood, sweat, and tears to, isn't it?
Yes, it's strictly volunteer until you get up. Now Dave gets paid. Of course, I imagine he needs to get paid. There's a couple of other people that get paid, but there's so much stuff going on here that it doesn't really come out of the money that you pay for memberships. It comes out of other things that they have going. But there's very few paid positions. I think the secretary at the main office gets paid, but like I said, it's very few. But for the most part, yes, you're on your own dime, and I have no problem with that, not at all.
Neither do I.
And I also, since I've been in for so long, I edit the field investigator's manual, and it's like 500 pages now. And I also edit the director's handbook. And we have just recently basically joined, kind of reworded it used to be state director's handbook. And because it was named that, the people in the international, they said, well, that's state directors. That has nothing to do with us. And so we were having a lot of problem with that. And so here recently, I have kind of reworded it in there, and we don't call it state directors. We call it just directors and assistant directors. That way it includes all of them, includes everyone around the planet. So that makes it a lot easier until you get to a country that they don't use English, and becomes a problem then, but it's workable. But for the most part, that's about it.
Right on, man. And currently, and again, what position do you hold at this time? What position are you holding right now?
Last year, I was the international director of investigations international, and then I got out of that, and Dave McDonald was the director of international development before he became the executive director, and I took over that position he has. I'm currently the director of international development. Yeah.
Wow. It took you almost 30 years to get to that point. That's pretty cool, man.
Yes, it's a long branch.
That it is, man. I know a guy named Joe Jordan. He's like I think he's like director over South Korea or something like that.
Yes.
He was on our show last year. Very interesting show. He sent me a copy of his book too. I've really enjoyed reading it.
I didn't know he had a book.
Yeah, he does. It's called Piercing the Cosmic Veil. I'll tell you about some other time. It's a really good book, man. But at any rate, so you've got quite a history established with MUFON. Have you ever, I know you said previous to you being in MUFON, you had never had a UFO encounter. Have you had one since then, since you joined the organization?
Not one that I couldn't explain. No. Now, I've had paranormal experiences.
Okay. Well, later, let's get into that. I'd
Okay.
like to hear about that later on for sure. Maybe in our next segment. You know, Steve, I just to give you a little bit about my background. I don't know how extensive I've gone into that with you in our conversations, but I've been researching for 18 years. Greg and Jake, tell him really quick about your history with investigating, so we can kind of get acquainted.
Greg, you want to take us off?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, with myself, I dabbled in paranormal a little bit, but didn't really take off until I met Mark Brenner, and we were co-workers at our last company. We'd go out into the field. We would do our own research on the local areas. You know, that's with supernatural or with UFOs. I've been on a few excursions with Mark, and we've spotted a few UFOs around the North Georgia area. That's kind of how I got into this podcast with Mark, is because I'm interested in it as well.
And also, Greg, I thought I'd throw in and mention Steve. Greg is actually also our historical advisor. Later on in this year, we're going to be covering some historical mysteries, but that's what he also does that. And Jake, why don't you introduce yourself to him as well?
Yeah, so I started, as a teenager. I didn't really believe in ghosts and paranormal. That's where I kind of started out. I always believed in UFOs. Started looking at the paranormal just because the ability to do it, was obtainable for a 16-year-old. Started with the paranormal, ghosts, graveyards, all that fun stuff, abandoned asylums, jails, been in all of them. Recently started getting into UFOs and the like, given the heightened activity. Probably the main reason that all this started, I'd have to say, would be the ghost stories my dad told me growing up about living in a haunted house. And living in a town where, now that I look back and as I'm doing more research, I realize that it's not normal that most of the buildings in your town have a haunted history like mine did growing up. So that's how I got into it, and now I'm real excited to talk UFOs today.
Man, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing all those details with Steve. Steve, now in your position in MUFON, you have been you get access to a lot of the latest UFO news and buzz and maybe even some exopolitics. What can you kind of brief us on and our listeners on what the latest headlines are in the UFO world?
Well, right now the latest headlines are that everybody's thinking that this is all going to be brought out into the open here just anytime soon. And I don't believe so, to tell you the truth. And all of these Navy films that they're showing out there, I don't believe any of that's real. I think it's, I hate to say this, but I think we're lining up for a false flag scenario.
Really?
Yeah, that's just my own opinion.
Sure. I got you. What motive do you think they would have for this? Are they trying to, is it disinformation? Is it like Richard Doty like stuff, or like a bunch of disinformation, or what's going on, do you think?
I think it's something that I call watch my left hand, but don't see what my right hand is doing. And I think there's other things going on, and they're wanting you to see this. That's I was in the Navy a long time, got a security clearance and all that kind of thing. When someone comes out in the open that has a supposedly security clearance and they start spouting off about things that are supposed to be under a security umbrella, I don't trust that guy. And if he was actually telling the truth, he'd be dead. Because if he's out there spouting off some things that are supposed to be secret, he'd be dead to keep the secret a secret. So I don't buy into all of that. So they're doing that for a reason. What the reason is, I don't know, but I think it's just to keep you distracted. I wouldn't fall in for that at all. Period. And
Wow.
these military films that they're showing, there's ones that they show quite often, and the two jet pilots that are chasing this thing are having a nice little conversation like two kids in a video game. And if they were really chasing something that they thought was a threat and didn't know what it was, I guarantee you they wouldn't be laughing and jumping up and down about it. They'd be serious. And if you notice, no one's ever said this but me, but if you notice, well, this radar is locked in on this one thing that's going over the water. Look at look up at the horizon. They're in a 45-degree turn. That means they're going in a circle. Now, why would they be chasing a UFO in a circle?
Wow.
So I just don't buy into it. And these objects that they call what do they call that? It's just like a long pill. I forget what they call that.
The Tic Tacs.
Tic Tacs, yeah, the Tic Tacs. I read something a long time ago that when the government got into researching UFOs and rebuilding them and things of that nature, that the first thing they did was took a submarine and refitted a submarine because it was a better structure to support weight and pressure and that nature. And once you knock all the superstructure off of it, you have a Tic Tac. So there's another thing I look at too is if and I picked up on this when we were doing the Stephenville case. There was 4 or 5 police officers down around Stephenville on duty at that time, and they were scattered out around Stephenville. And they all saw what I call the flying Walmart. It's an object that's, yeah, that's what I call it. I'm sorry.
It's all good,
it's a half a mile by a mile and a flat surface with structures coming off of it. And this thing is going slowly over downtown Stephenville at night. And these officers all saw it, and they kept quiet about this for a long time because they didn't want to get fired. But this object just kind of slowly went over, and then it inverted like 90 degrees, and instead of flat, now it's straight up and down, and it just took off. So I look at it like this. Look, if I'm an ET and I have an object like the flying Walmart flying around, and that may be the only way I have to get home, I would not be flying it around above the planet of the apes that has jets that might damage my equipment. I would be invisible. And that's the way I look at this. What we see in the air is basically our stuff. All the ET guys, they're going to be invisible where the planet of the apes can't shoot them down. That's just the way I look at it.
Wow, that's an interesting outlook on it. I've never really even thought about that. That's pretty interesting. I know that sometimes a lot of UFO sightings, they like some of them, these UFOs, some of them seem to be able to morph, change shapes in midair. I've heard of some of them disappearing, just vanish. As a matter of fact, UFO sighting that Greg and I had. Greg, could you tell Steve about what you witnessed with me? I'd like to hear it from your mouth. Could you tell about that UFO that we saw that disappeared and appeared over the horizon near the lake?
Yeah, this was back in, what was it, 2016. we were out one night, and we were viewing some of the aircraft up in the sky, but there was this one aircraft what we consider a UFO that would sort of fade out and like would reappear someplace else, which I always found bizarre. I was just trying to wrap my mind around how can it go from here to there.
Yeah,
Well,
it would
bizarre.
basically just.
That's the one we were talking.
It's like it was you remember it was almost like it was phasing it out of our time space and then reappearing in another area of time space. Because I asked Greg, we used to work together, Steve, and one night I remember I remember this night pretty good. We were closing up our department, and I'd casually mentioned to Greg about this. I was having this UFO sighting every night for about 2 months. It was, I want to say it was back in 2017. I think it was 2017. But we were having this UFO sighting. I was having a UFO sightings almost every single night for 2 months straight. And I asked Greg, I said, look, man, I want to witness to this. I want someone to see it so people won't think I'm crazy. And sure enough, he came out there and saw what he just described. And then I had other UFO sightings as well. I had a triangle sighting the next week with a county deputy. So it was a pretty active area around here.
I had a old Navy friend that lived in Ohio, and I always kept in touch with him all the time. And he was always constantly telling me about UFO reports around where he lived. He had I won't call it a ranch, but I don't want to call it a farm either. But there's a lot of area, 75 acres or something like that, and it's pretty surrounded, alone by himself. But he's always telling me about these UFOs. And he called me up one night, and this was like a year or 2 years ago. He called me up and says, "There's that UFO again. It's flying. It's going south of me." And so I looked up this app that I have that shows me where all the airplanes are and they're of flight. And I looked up his where he lived, and sure enough, there was an airplane flying south of his area, and it was going west. And all of a sudden, it turned, and it was going up toward Columbus. And he said, I said, it just turned, didn't it? And it's going north. He said, how'd you know that? Because I'm looking at the airplane that you're looking at. And that made him so mad he couldn't stand it. But it was just a white light for him. It was so high in the air, he didn't see all the other lights. And aircraft will do that. The only light you're going to see is their landing light, basically, because it's on and it's bright. You don't see the running lights because they're too high. And once they turn, that landing light kind of goes out of view, and you don't see it anymore. So you think it's gone. You have to look at that when you're thinking about UFOs.
Definitely, man. There's a lot of factors to consider when doing an investigation, because you have to debunk this stuff. Because if you can't, the only way you can prove that we're being visited by non-human entities of some kind is to debunk it. And if you can't debunk it, that kind of leaves the alternative explanation for what you're looking at.
That's a word I really don't like, debunking. I was doing an interview one time with I can't think of his name. He's on Fox News now, but back then he was on WBAP, and he asked me one time about debunking. I said, I really don't like that word. I like the word explaining a lot better than debunking. Oh, he goes, oh, well, okay, I understand. It's funny.
So one thing that I've noticed, back to what I was telling you earlier. So I've had these experiences my entire life. As long as I can remember, I've had anomalous and paranormal experiences of different kinds. And as long as I can remember, I've had missing time. I've had a lot of UFO sightings. I've had poltergeist phenomenon, just a whole hodgepodge. And have you seen a lot of cases or any amount of cases over your career with MUFON where people would have these close encounters and then have some kind of a paranormal fallout afterwards or before?
It happens. Doesn't happen all the time, but it happens quite a bit. And a lot of times they're just trying to pull the wool over my eye when I'm investigating it. And I've seen plenty of videos of, well, the door in the kitchen of the cabinet, it opened up and a dish or something flew out of it and crashed on the floor. And I look at this and I consider that if I can recreate that, so can someone else. And I can tie wires on all kinds of little doorknobs and dishes and pull them out when somebody's not looking that are out of view of the camera. And another thing that really bugs me to death is, well, I've had poltergeist and ghost visits all my life, and aliens all my life, and then I say, well, how many cameras do you have installed around your house? Well, that stops them right there. They go, well, none. I said, well, why not? I mean, I've had visitations and I have cameras all over my house, and guess what? They stopped happening. That's strange enough.
Yeah.
So now I point all my cameras outside, so whatever. But I have a theory about all of that. If you're ready to listen to it.
Yes, please. I
Okay.
want to hear. I want to hear your take on this.
Okay, I'm 72 years old, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. So I'm dangerous with my opinions. So anyway, I've got some questions I always throw out to people that talk to me about this thing, and what I would like to do is I'd like to ask you guys a question right off the bat. I want you to this puts I'm trying to put everything into perspective. How long was man in an animal drawn vehicle?
What kind of vehicle?
Animal drawn.
Like horse drawn, ox drawn.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to defer to somebody else on this one.
Just take a guess.
I would say for at least 1,000 years. I would say at least maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Greg?
Same here.
Jake?
I'm gonna have to say 1,000 or more years.
Okay, the estimate is about 2,500 years. Okay, let me show you how smart we are. How long from the time we stepped off of the animal drawn vehicle and stepped onto the moon? How many years is that?
That's under 100 years.
About 65. Now, from the time we stepped off of that animal drawn vehicle until now, which is 1,201 years or whatever, why are we still getting 21 miles to a gallon in that damn car?
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
And why are we trillions of dollars in debt and can't show for it?
Yeah, we're definitely in debt. That's for sure.
Okay, that kind of lets you know that we're smarter than we think, or at least somebody is, and somebody's paying for it. Okay, so that tells me the secret space program is very, very strong.
Are we talking about the Space Force clandestine operations?
That just recently came around, but what I've read, I don't want to tell you. I have sources because when someone in ufology tells me they have sources that they can't name, as far as I'm concerned, they're lying. Because the government is tuned in on everything. They know everything is going on in our cell phones, on our computers. I don't try to hide anything. If anybody knows anything at all, they're dead. Seriously. They don't want this information out. But I got another question for you.
Sure.
Describe to me, I want each of you to describe to me what a ghost is.
Jake, you want to take this one first?
Yeah. So a ghost, I typically don't use the word ghost when I'm investigating because, that brings what people think of being a full body apparition. I would say a ghost, seeing a ghost or paranormal sighting would include any form of orb caught on camera, shadows over a laser grid, basically any type of entity that we couldn't perceive with our senses, or we can perceive with our senses, but can't perceive where it's coming from.
Greg?
I always just saw it as just a disembodied spirit. It's intelligent or not intelligent, whether it's something that you can actually interact with, or if it's something that's sort of imprinted in time and space and just repeats the same event over and over again.
Yeah. I think my take on the whole ghost thing, I don't really, at the end of the day, I think there's multiple explanations for it. I think sometimes it's what he just described. It's like a psychic imprint in the fabric of space and time that just seems to repeat itself. There's no intelligence behind it. It's just like a recording a closed loop that plays over and over and over. Now, in some cases, I think that we might be looking at maybe a time warp also. I think that's possible. And sometimes I think it's some kind of disembodied spirit trying to interact with us, and for some reason.
Okay, I can tell you guys have been really into this. The average person will tell you that it's the energy from a dead person.
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
My question to that is, why are they wearing clothes? Because last time I threw some underwear away, I haven't seen it floating around my house. Here's what my opinion is on that. My opinion is that it's very possible that what we see, let's just say a kid at night, asleep in bed, and all of a sudden they're startled awake. They wake up and look at the foot of the bed, and there's their dead grandmother walking around looking at them. Well, they're going to jump up all screaming and holler and run into the mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy, their grandmama is in the bedroom. Well, you had a bad dream. Come on, get to bed with us. Well, maybe they didn't have a bad dream. I think that ghosts, fairies, Bigfoot, Dogman, and all of that is a figment of our own imagination that was placed in our imagination by entities that are visiting the planet Earth. This is just my opinion. Just my opinion. Because there's no proof of anything, period, that you can take to court and win with. Let's take, for instance, a Bigfoot footprint, right? I can go make those because when I was a teenager, we did. We made Bigfoot footprints out here by the lake where everybody was seeing a Bigfoot or something. So we just went out there and made some footprints. It's easy. So we get back to Bigfoot. Someone's marching around in the forest, and they step across an alien, and all of a sudden the alien doesn't want to be seen because we're not real. So they give you the impression that you're seeing Bigfoot. They will scare you off. And same thing with Dogman and Bigfoot and fairies and anything else that people see out there on their own doing whatever they are doing. And there's no proof. So as far as I'm concerned, they didn't see what they think they saw. And that's just the way I look at it. I'm sorry.
So, Steve, if I can actually ask you a question about that. You said is that some type of mental image that they would be putting into our head as a memory?
Yes.
Or would that be more, okay, so more that than some type of cloaking or camouflage or anything like that. So yes, it's an image they implant in your brain so you can see what they're looking at. Every person I've ever talked with that has had an ET experience, they will tell you a lot of times that they can't move, and they're seeing and projecting on what they're doing. So it's all a mind control thing, however that's done. But when you have a brain the size of a basketball, I suppose you can do a lot of things. But it's all image enhancing to me, and they're making you see what they want you to see. And I looked at it wasn't a video, it was a photograph of this guy. He was in the back seat of his car, and he was peeking over the back seat of the car
pointed toward the hood of the car. And you guys know the cartoon Kilroy? You remember
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
I don't recall
Like
that one.
like something peeking over. Well, that's what this Bigfoot was doing. All you see is like the top of its nose and its eyeballs and its bushy head peeking over the car hood. Now, Bigfoot is supposed to be about 8 feet tall. Why would Bigfoot get down on hands and knees, maybe even his belly, and peek over the hood of that car to see the guy that's in the back of the windshield, that back of the car? And then the second photo was a sloppy mess of, I suppose, liquid snot and liquid, I don't know, it was smeared all over the car window. And I asked this guy, I said, did you take a sample of that? No, but I went to the car wash and washed it off. So I said, thank you very much for your report. And I just let it go. I mean, the guy didn't get a sample. And you know, another thing that messes me around with photos of UFOs and of that nature, they'll send you one photograph. Now, I have an iPhone. It's not the best one in the world, but I know that I can hold that button down and it'll take about 10 photographs in a second. And if I'm looking at a UFO and I'm gonna take some pictures of it, I'm gonna be so afraid I'll probably blow the camera up trying to take pictures of this thing. But they only send you one photo. So that's one thing I ask for. If you guys are field investigators, what you want to ask for, like if they have, oh, well, I got to take a picture here. Look at every picture on their phone, all of them. And if they have a photograph, you want to see every photograph that was on that roll. That way you can find out for sure if they're taking 7 or 8 or whatever, and they're messing around with the photos. And when I ask for stuff like that, oh, I'm a agent with the government, and you don't believe what I'm saying, and I said, oh, so whatever. Okay, thank you very much. So look for stuff like that.
Definitely. I think this is a good point to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about some specific cases. I want to talk about some of your favorite, some of your more. I want to hear about some of your cases that you are like, man, this is the closest thing to a smoking gun that I've seen. I want to talk about that and anything else you want to talk about, Steve. That's okay.
Sure.
All right. You're listening to Project Stargate Friends Research with our guest today, Steve Hudgeons. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Project Stargate. We're here with our special guest, Steve Hudgeons. And Steve, before we went to break, we were kind of getting into some paranormal stuff, and let's continue with that.
Okay. Yes, I've had not very many, but I have my share of paranormal experiences. And unlike a lot of UFO reports I see, I'm very, very unable to identify what these were. But maybe you guys can help. But anyway, I was like about 18 or 19 years old, and I was out in Justin, Texas, which is just north of Fort Worth. And I was at a house that they had moved into. These friends of mine moved into, and I went out there for the weekend. And just when we go out there, we just play with teenagers and their parents, and we just kind of play around, play cards, and then it gets late at night, then we go to bed. But this was a very, very, very old house, and it was like on a lot of property, and the closest house was kind of offset, but directly across the street, but nobody lived in it. It was vacant. And the closest other houses were like a quarter mile away. So you got a pretty open space out there. And it's one of those, if the moon's not up, you're not going to see what you're walking into. That's how dark it is out there. There's no lights anywhere. But this was in the summertime, and we had all retired and went to bed. And I'm in this bedroom all by myself. And just like I said, it's an old house. There's bedrooms on each side of a long, drawn-out combination living room, dining room. And then there's a screened-in porch, and that's where the bathroom was back out there. And there was 2 bedrooms on this. Let's see, that was the west side of the building. And also the kitchen was there too at the end. Of course, the kitchen and the bathroom are combined together. And on the east side of the house, there was 3 bedrooms, and then a stairway going up. There was a second floor. I tell you the truth, I never went upstairs. I don't even know what it looked like up there. But anyway, we went to bed that night and going to sleep. I'm sleeping, of course, and then all of a sudden I woke up just out of the blue. I just woke up, and of course it's dark, man. It's dark everywhere. You can't always see your hand in front of your face. And I'm thinking, well, what woke me up? And then I remembered that it was a big crash. Like I always describe it like like if a stack of pots and pans was on your table and they fell off into the floor, and it was loud. It woke me up, and I was the furthest bedroom from it. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, somebody else had to have heard it too, but I don't hear anybody getting up. So I'm laying there trying to go back to sleep, and I started hearing the floor cracking and popping, like someone walking across it, and they were going really slow, like and going along the wall there about the size of the eye. Those guys are they're going to sneak in here and try to scare me is what they're going to try to do. So I'm laying there waiting on them.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden it stops, the creaking stops at my door. And I'm laying there waiting on them because I'm going to jump on them, scare them first. And all of a sudden the room filled with cold air. It's like you opened the freezer door. And I'm telling you, this is Texas in the summertime. It was summertime. And it's 80, 90 degrees at night here in Texas. So like I said, I've been reading about ghosts all my life, and I knew that cold air meant a ghost just walked into the room. So here I am laying in bed, stiff as a board, because I'm scared now. I had my eyes planted shut. I did not want to see what was coming in that room. And I didn't hear any walking or anything of that nature, but I just felt the cold room. It was like you turned the air conditioner on and thing, and there was nothing but water coolers in that house. And I'm laying there, and I don't even know how much time passed, but I started hearing this thumping, pounding noise in my head, and I've got my hands across my shoulder, my chest, basically like I have now, and that thumping was my heart beating. My heart beating was about to blast out of my chest because I was petrified. I did not want to be where I was at right now, because this ghost, whatever it is going to come in here, is going to get me, and I don't, here we go. And then the next thing I know, I wake up the next morning. I wake up, look around, jump out of bed. Everybody's eating breakfast. Did y'all hear about y'all hear that noise last night? They look at me like I'm an idiot. What noise? Nobody heard anything. And I said, well, okay. So I just quit worrying about it. Didn't worry about it after that. And of course, the next year I was in the Navy now. And here's where it all came back. We were on the fantail of the ship. That's the back part. And everybody's out there smoking cigarettes, telling stories. And they started telling ghost stories. And I said, hey, I got one for you. And I started telling them about my story. And I got to that last part. And I'm going, wait a minute. Here I am asleep. Well, not asleep, but here I am in bed. My heart's about to explode. And I'm about to drown in adrenaline. And I went to sleep. No, I didn't go to sleep. So I don't know what happened after that. And anytime I tell this story, like right now, I'm getting goosebumps and the hair on the back of my neck's raising. So I don't know what was going on. And someone asked me one time, have you ever had any regression? And I said, no, because I don't want to know what happened. It's like I asked Travis Walton one time. I said, Travis, have you ever wanted to go back and transgress and find out what went on and all that when you're on the ship, the stuff you don't know? No. He said, because I think that beam came out of there and killed me, and they took me back on board and tried and revived me. He said, if I go back, I might die when I'm doing it. I said, well, that's a damn good reason. As far as I'm concerned, I agree with you. Don't do it. But I remember I had kind of funny little dreams for, I don't know, a couple of years after that. I was outside in the dark, and I could see what I'd always described as a box kite. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but they're kites that, and it was surrounded with like Christmas lights on it. But I don't have those. A couple of years of that, and then it kind of went away. And of course, I was in the Navy 4.5 years, and I got out of the Navy and I got married. and I moved into the house that I'm still in right now. And I worked out of town a lot. I was in construction, putting in glass work in high rises and buildings, and I'd come home, and my wife started telling me about the banging on the house. And I said, "What banging?" She said, "I'll be laying here in bed and I hear boom, boom, boom on the house." I said, "What?" And I just kind of blew it off. I said, "I don't know what that is." She told me about that 6 or 7 different times. And one night I was home and I heard it. Boom, boom, boom on the house, and it quit.
Wow.
And that made me, I got up, and it was the back window, and I'm looking at that window right now where we're talking. And that's my kid's bedroom. And
Wow. Holy crap.
I went back there with my 45, and I was looking out the window, and I got lights out here everywhere. I've got lights all over the place. And I peeked through the curtains, boom, boom. But now this is hard enough to rattle the windows. This wasn't just something tapping. This is something rattling the windows on the south side of my house.
So your house was practically shaking from these
Yes,
impacts.
yes, it was. It was rattling the windows over here. And of course, they were old windows, and I've recently gotten rid of all of those. It was the old wood kind with the putty in the glass, that kind of thing.
Right.
I got rid of those. I've got better windows now. They're aluminum, and they don't rattle. But anyway, anyway, the next morning, it beat 3 more times. This did it about 5 times in a row, and I'm sitting here looking out the window where the banging is going on. The light is on, and there's nothing there. Nothing.
Wow. Holy smokes, man.
So it quit. It quit. And I went outside the next morning looking around, and I look in the dirt. There's a flower bed there, and there's no footprints or anything in the dirt. And I actually hit the house myself with my fist, slammed it up again like a sledgehammer, and basically generated the same sound, rattling the same windows. And it had to be somebody hitting it hard. And I haven't heard that since. It just went away.
Wow.
So I have no idea what that was.
That's creepy, man. You mentioned something earlier. You said that you saw what looked like a box kite with Christmas lights around it.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
No idea. That was in a dream. That was in a dream. No idea.
Have you had? Do you think you had missing time that time? Do you think that you experienced missing time?
It's very possible because, like I said, I went to sleep with adrenaline blowing out my ears, and I didn't wake up till 4 or 5 hours later in the morning.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Wow.
No idea.
That's incredible. I haven't had anything banging on my house or anything, but I've had a lot of other bizarre stuff like similar to that happen. So, as far as tell us, give us some more. Give us something else. What I want to hear more of this.
Well, here we are in the same house. This is after the banging on the house deal. They were sitting in the living room watching TV, and all of a sudden, I had converted the attic. The attic is pretty tall. I converted the attic into a long room up there with plywood floors, sheetrock walls, that kind of thing. And here we are, we're watching TV, and all of a sudden I heard this bump, 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 bump going across the attic. Excuse me. It was like someone was up there and running across the floor. And the first thing I looked around, there's the kids. They're watching TV with me. I said, "What was that?" And my wife, "I don't know." So I went up there and looked. I said, "Maybe a dog or something, or a big cat got in there." I said, I went up there and looked, and nothing up there, but just stuff. So we started hearing that quite often. And there was one time when I'm sitting in the living room, I can look basically kind of down the hall, and I can see the stairs going up, and I've got a light at the top of that. And there was one time I thought I saw a shadow go across that wall, like bump, 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 and then stop. And I almost saw a shadow, but I don't know. It could have been, I don't know. But of course, I got up and went up there and looked, nothing there. Never could find anything up there. And that stopped. So I don't know.
As far when you say you saw a shadow, you think you may have seen a shadow. Is it something you caught in your peripheral vision or something?
Yes, peripheral vision, and I wear glasses. It could have been a reflection of something on my glasses. So that's kind of way I kind of just blow it off. Otherwise, I'd have set a big rat trap up there for something to step in.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. We had a homestead up in Kansas, northeast Kansas, and it's notoriously haunted. I mean, it is absolutely notoriously haunted. The people who bought the house after my grandmother passed away, my grandfather actually committed suicide in the house.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and I believe I kind of tend to believe that when stuff like that happens, it attracts bad things. That's just my opinion.
Well, they may not be bad things. You always hear about purgatory, the place where everybody goes before they go to heaven, that kind of a thing. Or maybe there are areas that, you always hear that when people die, you see the tunnel with the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe someone doesn't reach to that light. Maybe they refuse to go down there and they want to stick around. I've heard stories like that.
I've done quite a bit of research with near-death experiences, mainly because my uncle, when I was about 8 years old, he told me and my cousin an incredible story that changed his life. He had a near-death experience. It's pretty fascinating subject to me, and I tend to believe that most of the accounts I've read, at least most of the accounts I've read, I tend to believe them because there's so many similarities. And a lot of anecdotal evidence, I guess you could say, to support these stories. Let's have a little bit of Q&A. I'm gonna let Jake. I'm gonna let you kick it off, buddy.
Sure. So I want to go back and revisit what you had said about the cloaking or we'll just call it camouflage for right now.
Okay.
Sure, with the Sasquatches and all that. Now, is that something that you think is happening in real time, or is that just a rehashed memory, do you think?
It could be either one. I would think right off my first impression would be that it's immediate. But then secondly, depending on what is there looking at you or what you're looking at, that could warrant a enhanced memory, because in that way they grab you, do what they want to do, and then put you back out there.
Kind of like a flashy thing from Men in Black.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Greg?
When we were talking about ghosts and whatnot, you said that was the possibility in your own theory that they might drills trying to implement some sort of an image in your mind. And to be fair, I've been thinking about that for some time now, and it's kind of weird because I was like, what if it's just some sort of extraterrestrial being just kind of messing with your minds, trying to get into your primitive fear of the dead? You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
Yes, I agree with that.
Wow. Latest UFO. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the latest UFO cases that you guys have looked at recently that you're intrigued by?
Since I've been doing this for so long, I got about 2,000 cases on my own, and what I see about the UFO reports that are coming in, most of them are identifiable. We have over 100,000 cases in the CMS, and there's probably 20-25% that are unknowns, and the rest of them we can identify. But even the unknowns, they stay unknown because we can't identify what they are. But that doesn't really mean that they are from off planet. That doesn't mean that, because, like I've said many times, aliens are going to be here. They're going to be invisible because they don't want to be injured or destroyed by us. We're so timid. You know what I mean? So they're going to remain It's like that Stephenville incident. All around Stephenville, we found out when we were down there that it's basically surrounded by a military exercise zone. The jets are down there flying around all the time. And we found out that they have 9,000 different flares that they drop all the time testing. So that's what most of the people are seeing, is stuff that they have no idea what it is. So if you see a big ball of orange light, if you don't know the jets are down there with flares, then, oh, that's a big orb. So it's just mostly misidentification. Now, there was a photo I cannot pronounce where it's Winnebago or someplace like that, is a UFO, is a round saucer shaped object that a woman took photographs of, and it's flying across, and it must be the wintertime because there's the tree that it's in between it. There's no leaves in the tree. It's just limbs. And underneath the UFO, there's a triangulation of 3 white spots, and 1 ahead and 2 behind. And off to the right, between 2 of the lights, there's a red light, and it's all underneath. And she took 2 photos. And the one photograph that was the closest, what really was fascinating, and the reporter that reported it said the same thing, that one of the limbs that was in between the person taking the photo and the UFO was crossing one of the white lights. And when it did this, the light was so bright that you couldn't see the limb in that area. And that caught my attention, because if someone's faking a photograph, would you think to do that with the light? Make the light brighter than the limb? Would you think to do that? I wouldn't. And then in the second photograph, as it's going a little further away, the red light changed to white light. So then there's 4
Wow.
white lights. So I wouldn't think of something like that. And there was hardly any pixelation around the photo itself. So I said it was a great photo, and it looked real to me. But our photo analyst says, Mark D'Antonio, he says, no, it's fake. So okay, whatever. So there's another thing I want to bounce across you guys, see what you think. Well, first of all, have you guys seen photos of UFOs that are not too far off the ground? Has anybody shown you these things?
Kind of like
Yeah.
a Billy Meyer photo.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you've seen things like that. Okay, after you view enough of these things, you start looking at them like I do. But I have seen photos of UFOs that are like tilting, making a turn, that kind of thing. And some of them are straight, some of them are level, and most of them are crooked. Now, what I have been told about UFOs, they don't have engines like we have. So they're not going to leave a heat trail. They just don't. And they're magnetically driven. And if you guys have ever worked with magnets when you're a kid, magnets only stay in one position. That's basically horizontal. So if you have a UFO that's running around, flying around, it's not going to be tilted because it doesn't need the air to move. So any tilted UFO picture you see, you better be subject to this guy. You need to look at all the rest of photographs he's been fooling with, because they're not going to be tilted. That's just the way I look at it. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about it.
So one thing I've noticed, I want to comment on that. One thing that as far as, this kind of goes back into parapsychology research a little bit. During incidents of poltergeists, for example, I'm just going to use that as an example.
Yes.
One thing that I've observed is the immediate area where the phenomenon is happening, it gets really cold. It's chilling. Right. Sometimes you can even see your breath. It's a dramatic change in temperature, along with EMF and other things. So feature this. So sometimes in UFO, in some of these, I've seen a few good UFO videos over the years, and one thing I've noticed in some of them is the actual object itself seems to be really cool. Like when you're looking at it from with like a thermal camera or something like that. Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder, in addition to using magnetism, I wonder if there's some degree of PK that's involved with this.
There may be. that once you start electrifying everything, it's like the Eldridge. When they turned on all their little electricity around there, it's like they separated the atoms, and some of the sailors are getting stuck in the walls of the ship. So sure, there's not much telling what goes on when you start flipping the switch on that electromagnetic. We did a ghost hunt one time. I went out with some ghost hunters, and I know a couple of them. They like to tag me along, see what I think. So it was they call it the Old Red Courthouse. I think it's over in Dallas. It's basically a museum. It's been there forever. And we went over there. I forget how many people were there. I don't know, 10 people probably. They had cameras and stuff set up all over the place, and we were going running around with EMF readers or whatever those meters they have.
EMF detectors, yes.
Yeah, we were running around with those, and we got to one point basically as in the middle of the building, and there's a stairway that goes up to the top of the second floor. It goes up and then branches off on left and a right, and then up to the second floor. And the guy I was with, he had an EMF reader, and he walked over there, and he took a couple of steps up on the stairs there, and his meter just pegged off into the red real quick. And he's waving it around, and he's talking and things like that. And then he stepped back off, and as soon as he got back down there again, it went back off. And
wow.
He said, "Did you see that?" Yeah, he went over and he took a step on the meters again. I'm on the steps again, and it went off again. And so I said, "Here, let me see that." And he stepped back off, and it went down to 0. So I went over there, and I just put one step on the stairs, and it went off. So
wow.
I stepped back off the stairs, and I extended my hand 2 feet above the stairs, and it didn't go off. But as soon as I stepped on the step, it went off. So as far as I'm concerned, there's some kind of I don't know, electrical field on that set of stairs that's causing that thing to set off, like maybe a short in something. There might be some electrical wires there somewhere. And the reason I say that is because I know another paranormal investigator. He even has a paranormal show, and he's down in San Antonio. He's an ex-police officer. Oh, I work with the police department here in Fort Worth, and citizen on patrol, and I've been doing that for about 25 years. But anyway, that's how I knew him. And he was telling me about a paranormal experience thing that he went and investigated. And he said there was this one house that these people had, and they said there was one room they walk into and they get sick, and they have to leave out of that room or something in that room. So he went and investigated it. And as soon as he stepped into that room, that EF meter almost exploded off his hand. So he got back out there, and it didn't make any difference. Like in a window, a door, whatever they stick that meter in there, it goes off. So they said, well, let's check under the house. So they did. They crawled under the house, and under the house was a ball of electrical wire that had been tangled together, and it wasn't sparking, but it was together and generating electricity enough where it got hot enough and melted the plastic off of the wires. And that is what was sending the electrical field up, making everybody sick.
And that was probably causing, it could have been also causing hallucinations and stuff like that.
It probably did. But anyway, you have to look for stuff like that, electrical activity.
Definitely. Because, like I've heard of a lot of cases where they were solved, essentially, because of things like that, like bad electrical wiring. Yes. Even mold and asbestos and stuff like that, I've heard can cause anxiety, feelings of dread. These are things that you definitely have to look out for. I'm glad you brought that up.
There's only one mold that's bad for you, really, really bad for you, and it's called black mold. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's generated from leaky hot water areas. The other mold that's just out there is not really that dangerous, but the ones around heating areas, like a hot water heater, for instance, if a hot water heater is leaking, it's going to have black mold around it. That's the kind that's going to mess you up. So keep that in mind.
Definitely, man. I'll let you guys take this. Greg, comment?
I have nothing right now.
Okay, Jake.
Okay.
Just something to add, a similar story, just how electrical interference can happen so easily. We had, Wi-Fi in the house with a Wi-Fi booster up in my sister's bedroom on the opposite end of the house. One day she did something, I can't remember, she took some type of charger, some type of copper wire, set it on top of the booster, and in doing that created an electric field, some type of field that ended up taking the Wi-Fi out for several houses,
Wow.
blocking signals coming in.
Dang.
And the way we found out, a Comcast actually tracked it down and came to our home because they thought we were doing something. And so just another example of how something simple and small like that can cause such a big electro field, and we see that a lot with the investigating as well.
Definitely do, man. I find these fields of research fascinating, and the thing that I'm seeing a lot, Steve, is I'm seeing a lot of crossover with various different types of paranormal stuff, and including UFOs. I'm seeing a lot of crossover.
I'm not really seeing a bunch of crossover. I know a lot of people have been coming to me trying to combine MUFON's UFO research with paranormal research, and we don't do that. We're not going to add paranormal in with UFOs. Somebody said to me once, well, there's evidence of a Bigfoot coming out of a UFO. And I said, well, we don't have but 2 reports like that in the entire CMS. And as far as I'm concerned, the aliens kidnapped a Bigfoot and he was tearing the ship up, so they let him out.
That's probably what happened.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Is that all you got to do to get off the ship?
Yeah, I just start tearing stuff up. Evidently, they can't
stuff.
control a Bigfoot.
Dang. What do you think? Do you if Bigfoot exists, do you think they're interdimensional entities of some kind?
People have asked me that before, and I have to say that first of all, you have to prove there's another dimension. And I always say that you're on one side of the road, and you don't know if you can get to that side of the road unless you walk over there and come back. Then you've done it. Otherwise, it's just a theory. And I don't know of anybody that's transferred to another dimension and brought back proof that'll win in a court of law that there's another dimension. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a theory.
Right. I know the physicists a lot of are suggesting that there might be possibly an infinite amount of other dimensions. I find that kind of stuff really interesting.
It's
Very
interesting, but it's like I said, it's interesting. Yes, I don't discard it, but it's interesting.
Yet to be proven. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, man. Well, man, this has been a great conversation, man. I think that maybe later this year we should have you back on sometime and talk about the latest buzz again. I've really enjoyed having you with us today.
Okay. By that time, I should have some interesting things to talk about, because right now there's some major things going on in MUFON, the organization, that I can't really talk about right now because it's in the beginning phases.
Right.
But later on, I can talk about it. Yeah.
All right. Let's stay in touch, and let's bring you back on later this year, and we can talk about some of this stuff.
Okay, no problem. Just holler at me.
We'll do it, man. Steve, it's been great having you with us. Thank you for your time today. Sorry about all the technical hassle earlier, but we're really glad that you were with us today, and very much enjoyed having you as a guest today with research with us.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed being here.
All right. You're listening to Project Stargate Friends Research. This has been a wonderful conversation. You're listening to, we had Steve Hudgeons today as our guest. Check back with us. We'll be back with you really soon, and thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys.